This is window replacement costs in Colorado in 2026. How much does window replacement cost in Colorado? Here is the real number. The average cost of whole home window replacement in Colorado is $31,460 in 2026, or approximately $1,966 per window installed. Now, that generally applies to an average 2,000 square foot home with 16 windows being replaced, a standard mix of window sizes, and includes a mid-range double hung vinyl window. I'm Patrick with WestPro Home Exteriors in Longmont, Colorado, and we are a Pella Platinum certified contractor. But this guide isn't about Pella specifically. It's about what window replacement actually costs in Colorado, what drives that cost up or down, and how to make a confident decision regardless of which brand you end up choosing. We'll reference Pella products as real-world examples throughout the video, alongside products like Andersen, Marvin Windows, Simonton, and Milgard, because those are the brands your neighbors are buying and the brands that inform real Colorado pricing. So here's what whole home window replacement costs across home sizes in Colorado in 2026. All pricing that we're going to be talking about today is installed window, and it's all in. So window material, the window itself, full frame installation, labor, removal and disposal, flashing, caulking, and a standard screen. This assumes a standard mix of small, average, and large windows. Keep in mind it does not include interior trim, specific permit costs, or specialty configurations. For a small home, or about 1,600 square feet, we assume 12 windows, and in that entry-level vinyl windows are gonna run $17,500 to $21,500. Mid-range vinyl runs $21,500 to $25,500. Now wood or fiberglass runs $26,500 to $30,500. For the average home, or about 2,000 square feet, there's 16 windows. For entry-level vinyl, it's gonna run $24,000 to $28,500. For mid-range vinyl, the range is gonna be around $31,460 for that average, like where that average cost lives in. The range is gonna be about $29,000 to $34,000. Now, for wood or fiberglass windows, we're gonna run $36,000 to $41,500 for that average home size. For a large home, about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet, we're assuming 20 windows. For that, entry-level vinyl runs about $30,500 to $36,000. Mid-range vinyl runs $37,500 to $43,000. Now, wood or fiberglass windows are gonna run $46,000 to $52,500 as a general range for the large home. Most Colorado homes, and keep in mind these are general averages, have approximately one window per 100 to 140 square feet of living area. A ranch style home tends to run higher on the window count, and that's because there's more wall area at that grade level. Two-story homes with a garage, they tend to run lower. If you don't know your window count, that range can be a general starting point. Vinyl windows versus wood windows versus fiberglass windows. Which one is right for your home? Window replacement cost is driven primarily by two main variables. That's the product tier and the window size. Let's walk through these product tiers and talk about sizes together. Entry-level vinyl. So products like the Pella 150 series, also called Pella Encompass, you'll find both names on the internet, and other comparable builder grade vinyl windows from other manufacturers. This also includes maybe Simonton and Andersen. These are the most common replacement windows installed throughout Colorado. So they're single hung, one operable sash, standard hardware, weather seals, meets energy code in most Colorado municipalities. So for budget driven projects, this is a functional and reasonable starting point. Mid-range vinyl. So products like this Pella 250 series, Milgard Tuscany, and Andersen 100 series. These are a full double hung where both sashes are operable. So there's better hardware, some improved weather seals, and a stronger warranty. This is the most common choice on standard Colorado replacement jobs, and it's the tier that drives that $31,460 average in this guide. The Pella 250 series double hung comes in at approximately $2,050 installed per window for a standard 3-foot by 5-foot window. And that's the specific number that anchors everything else in this guide. Now the premium or the additional cost over that entry-level vinyl is roughly 15 to 20% per window. So typically about $300 to $400 on a standard double hung window. So on a 16 window project in Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, and surrounding communities. So that difference runs $4,000 to $6,000 total when we compare those two options. Now this is your premium option. Premium wood and fiberglass products like Pella Lifestyle Series, Pella Impervia Fiberglass, Anderson 400 Series, and the Marvin Elevate. So this is better thermal performance with stronger warranties, longer expected service life. These are the right answer for specific homeowners. It's not necessarily a default upgrade for everyone. Okay, so one thing worth knowing for thinking about a typical job is the total cost difference between a premium wood window and a comparable fiberglass window is frequently pretty negligible for standard double hung sizes, meaning the price difference between those is not significant. The meaningful cost difference on a wood window job usually comes from interior wood trim, not the window itself. And we're gonna do more on that in a few minutes. So now we can talk about the window cost per window, and this is gonna be a size and product comparison. Here's what individual windows cost installed by size and product tier on Colorado projects in 2026. For our small window, that's gonna be a 24 by 36 inch or 60 UI entry-level vinyl runs $1,050 to $1,300. Mid-range vinyl runs $1,400 to $1,650. Premium wood or fiberglass runs $1,800 to $2,100. For our average window size, we're assuming a 3-foot by 5-foot or 90 UI, also known as 90 United Inches. For that, the entry-level option runs $1,600 to $1,900. Mid-range vinyl runs $1,900 to $2,200, and premium wood or fiberglass runs $2,250 to $2,600. Now for a large window, we're assuming about 48 inches by 72 inches, that's 120 UI. Entry-level option runs $2,400 to $2,700. Moving up to the mid-range vinyl runs $2,600 to $2,900. Premium wood or fiberglass for that large window runs $3,200 to $3,800 for our example. Now a casement configuration adds approximately $100 to $150 per window over the comparable double hung. Picture windows, this is a fixed, non-operable window that doesn't open or close. That's gonna run 8 to 12% less than the comparable operable window in that same tier. And that's because there's no cost associated with operational mechanisms. So what makes a window replacement cost more or less in Colorado? In other words, what factors drive the cost up and what can potentially drive the cost down for a typical project? We're just gonna focus on the 4 big ones. So 4 things that move window replacement costs significantly beyond that base product tier that we talked about earlier. First factor is the window count and the home layout. That's what we're gonna consider, so the number of windows. Let's assume a ranch style home in Denver, Longmont, and Fort Collins. It typically has more windows per square foot if we compare that to a 2-story home that has garage walls, because garage walls tend to have fewer windows relative to the size of the wall. So the window count drives a total cost more than the home square footage once you've selected your product tier. Second is the mix of window sizes. So a home with several large triple slider windows or oversized picture windows, or a large specialty double hung in a certain area of the house, that's gonna cost meaningfully more than a home of the same square footage with a lot of standard bedroom and bathroom windows. So the tables in this guide, they do assume roughly 30% small windows, 55% what we're calling average windows, and about 15% large windows as just a reasonable distribution of window size. So if your home skews towards large specialty windows, do expect to land above these ranges. Third factor is the window type. So double hung is the baseline that we talked about. Casement adds $100 to $150 per window. Picture windows come in slightly below double hung pricing if they're within those average sizes. Fourth factor, permits. Window replacement requires a building permit in virtually every Colorado municipality. Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, Longmont, Loveland. Permit costs range from $200 all the way to $2,000 depending on the jurisdiction and how the municipality breaks that down. So if this applies to you, It's not optional. It's not something that a legitimate contractor is going to offer to skip. Okay, so now we need to talk about the difference between full frame window replacement versus insert window replacement. One of the most important questions to ask any window contractor: is this a full frame replacement or are we doing an insert? Full frame replacement removes the entire window unit, the frame, sashes, and all the way down to the rough opening. So this allows proper inspection and replacement of the flashing, the sill pans, and any water damaged framing around the opening. It's really the correct approach for a complete warranted installation. Now, insert only replacement leaves the existing frame in place. It is faster and cheaper, but it prevents proper flashing inspection and can trap existing moisture problems behind the new window. If the existing window frame has water damage, an insert goes right over the top of it, okay? So you won't know until it's a much bigger problem. Full frame replacement is the only installation method that we use at WestPro. So when you're comparing bids, confirm which approach each contractor is pricing, because it's not always disclosed up front. Okay, so energy efficiency and U factor and Colorado window code requirements. Every quality replacement window installed on a Colorado home includes low E glass as a pretty general standard. So low E glass has a microscopic coating that reflects radiant heat, keeping heat inside in winter and reducing the solar heat gain in summer. It's not necessarily an upgrade on any quality product from Pella, Anderson, Marvin, Simonton. It's generally considered as the baseline. So the more important energy efficiency conversation in Colorado is the U factor. You're gonna see that reflected in a lot of the codes if you do that research. The measure of how well a window insulates is the U factor. A lower U factor equals better insulation. Now, Colorado building codes will set a minimum U factor requirement for window replacements, and they do vary by city. Most of the Colorado municipalities that we see require a maximum U factor of 0.30. So that's a threshold that's met by most mid-range and premium products at a standard glazing or glass. But several cities require stricter performance, and these codes are changing all the time. And that affects your product selection and cost. So let's use the city of Denver as an example. Denver requires 0.25 to 0.27 U factor, depending on your home's glazing area or area of glass relative to the conditioned floor area. So we're getting to some pretty nuanced code here. So for most standard residential projects in Denver, the applicable threshold is 0.27, but you want to drill down on the exact code for your home there. Boulder and Boulder County requires a 0.27 and is among the strictest requirements in Colorado. Louisville, Superior also requires 0.27. Broomfield, Estes Park, Fort Collins, and Lyons require 0.28. The remaining municipalities, including Longmont, Loveland, Arvada, Lakewood, see here, Thornton, Westminster, and most other Front Range cities, those all require what we kind of consider that standard 0.30. So here's the practical impact and takeaway. In a city like Longmont or Loveland at 0.30, most mid-range vinyl windows will meet code without any special modification. In Denver, Boulder, or Louisville at 0.27, some standard configurations are gonna require upgraded glazing packages. So what that means is fancier and a little bit more expensive glass. That upgrade typically adds $100 to $300 per window to the installed cost when we think about those averages. Okay, so take this from me. As a window contractor, you and your contractor should confirm the compliance of your windows to your specific building code during the estimate process and not after the window is ordered. Any experienced contractor has been there, and these are very nuanced codes, so you want to be very, very specific and detailed. All right, interior window trim. So let's talk about what it costs and when you might need it. What you think of as your interior window trim, that trim around windows on the inside of your house, we know that as jamb and casing, or the jamb extension and casing. And it's not included in a standard window replacement pricing. And it's not necessarily required. In most cases, and keep in mind I'm saying most cases here, not all the time, the existing window trim can be left in place, and then the new window can be installed without replacing the interior trim detail. Now, trim replacement becomes relevant in really two common situations. First, when existing trim is damaged or deteriorated, and second, and more commonly, when homeowners choose premium wood windows and they want matching wood interior casing. So it's not a requirement, but it's just a natural complement to a wood window. And It's a common addition on kind of higher end jobs. We see this particularly in Boulder, Denver, and Longmont for some nice homes, particularly in the older parts of town. Me personally, I'm a big fan of a wood window with stained jamb and casing. Interior jamb and case trim runs about $600 to $950 per window installed. The lower end reflects MDF or primed finger jointed pine in a standard profile trim, and the upper end of that range reflects stain grade pine or maple, typically in a flat stock or even a more decorative profile, like a colonial trim, for example. Exterior trim replacement, let's say we're replacing that exterior trim with James Hardie, prime trim, or maybe some LP trim or true wood. That runs about $200 to $240 per window, and it assumes the surrounding siding is in actual good condition so that trim can be replaced without damaging a bunch of siding. If we apply that on a 16 window average home, adding interior trim to every window adds approximately $9,600 to $15,200 to that total project cost. This is obviously a significant addition. I would budget it separately if it's part of your scope and it's something you're considering. Okay, so here's some just friendly contractor advice and a note on understanding interior paint and touch-up paint as part of a window replacement project. Most window replacement companies don't include interior paint. You should know this. They don't include the paint, stain, or touch-up paint as part of a project when they're originally estimating it. And here's why and what you can expect from this. So in many cases, no touch-up is actually needed. When new windows butt up to the existing drywall or casing, a clean caulk line at that window frame, it does provide like a nice finished look. But sometimes you'll get some minor drywall damage right at the edge of that drywall, and it occurs during the removal of that old window and the installation of the new one. It can be unavoidable in certain situations, despite our best efforts to replace that window without damaging anything. And a small amount of interior touch-up paint may be needed for the job to look, fully complete and really nice. So homeowners sometimes ask, why does the window company just finish the job completely? And I certainly understand that perspective, and I'm sympathetic to it. You as a homeowner just want the job done 100%. Here's my straightforward, honest contractor answer. Good window installers are not necessarily good painters, okay? And it's just how it is. When a window contractor does attempt some interior touch-up painting, this is just like a small touch-up request, what feels like a small touch-up request. It has a way of expanding into painting like a whole room in order to get it to match and have it be perfect. So for us, it can be a little slippery slope. And I've personally been there. And I've confirmed this with many other window contractors that I know in the business. It can happen pretty consistently. So here's my practical advice on how to navigate it. Touch up the paint yourself with leftover interior paint, or just hire a handyman for a small job like this. It is the most practical way to tackle it. So it will almost certainly cost you less than having a full-scale window contractor, go out and mobilize a painting company, just for 2 or 3 window openings, okay? So the same applies to staining or painting new interior trim. Generally, finding your own people to do it can be a way of avoiding some extra cost. So when we explain this to homeowners during an estimate, we've found that most of them almost always prefer to just handle it themselves because they see it as an opportunity to save a little bit of money in a practical way. All right, let's look through a couple of realistic cost examples for Colorado window replacement projects. I want to be clear, these are not actual completed projects. We've built these as example projects using real installed pricing data from a lot of jobs that we've done and other pricing data. So first example is a Longmont production home that's 2,000 square feet, has 16 windows. Customer wants to go with mid-range vinyl, double hung windows. There's no interior trim needed. That range is going to be $29,000 to $34,000. Example 2 is a Fort Collins ranch home. It's 1,600 square feet with 14 windows. They want to go mid-range vinyl. There's no interior trim again, $25,000 to $29,500. Example 3 is a older Boulder home, okay? So 2,000 square feet, there's 14 windows, but they want to go with a premium wood window such as Pella Lifestyle or maybe something like Marvin Elevate, okay? They do want to do new interior jamb and case, so interior trim on all of the windows, and we need that code compliant U factor, so we need that upgraded glazing or glass per Boulder code. That's $46,000 to $54,000. Fun example number 4, let's say we have a Denver suburban home, okay? So the Denver burbs, we've got a 2,000 square foot home, there's 16 windows, and they want to go with a fiberglass window such as Pella Impervia or maybe a Anderson 400 series. There's no interior trim on this project. That's gonna run $37,000 to $43,000. Example number 5 would just be a generic large Colorado home that's 3,000 square feet and has 20 windows in it, okay? Let's say we wanna go mid-range vinyl window with no interior trim. We're starting about $38,000 to $44,000 as far as a range. Our last example, just to show some scale for a particularly large project, let's pretend we have a Denver Homeowners Association. So this is an HOA that's multi-unit, there's 8 units per building, there's 80 windows total, and they wanna go entry-level vinyl, full frame replacement with standard access to those units. It's gonna be about $115,000 to $135,000, just to show the upper range there. So all these examples we're talking about include full frame replacement, removal and disposal. They include flashing, they include caulking, and standard screens on all the windows. The permit costs, interior trim, specialty configurations, difficult access, grids, grills, and a lot of other details aren't specifically included in these examples. Let's consider window repair versus full window replacement. When does each option make sense? Certainly not every window problem requires a full replacement of the window. There are 2 repair scenarios where it's generally appropriate. The first is broken glass. So if the insulated glass unit in a relatively modern window is broken, that glass unit can just often be replaced without replacing the entire window. That's just a glass repair, okay? So for that, I'd recommend you just call a glass company and not necessarily a window replacement contractor. Those are 2 different specialties. Second category here, it's just a common issue, broken or brittle glazing beads. So that's the vinyl strip that holds the insulated glass unit in the frame. They just become brittle over time. We see this all the time. They're frequently chipped by hail in Colorado. So those glazing beads can be replaced as a repair, as long as you can find the right profile. The other category is just basic hardware repair. So this is like a broken lock or maybe a worn operator. If those parts are available, it's gonna fall into that repair category. Outside of those 2 to 3 scenarios, full replacement is typically the right answer. So conditions that indicate, replacement, professional window contractors and homeowners, 1, seal failure, so that's fogging or condensation or visible moisture between the panes. It's the most common failure in Colorado production homes after about 10 to 15 years. Although that glass can be replaced there, it's an indication that the unit is failing overall, and it's probably not the right window for the home. Next one applies to older wood windows. That's rotted and deteriorated window frames. Also warped vinyl frames, and then single pane glass, which we find on older Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, and Longmont homes, especially in the old town areas. Those windows, they very clearly fail modern energy code, and they should be replaced. There's not really a viable repair option there. So one of the common questions we get from homeowners is about replacing all the windows at once versus phasing. So in other words, should I replace all the windows in my home all at once, or should I do them in stages, right? We get these questions all the time. Most window contractors are gonna price projects with volume in mind, and we're no different. And I think that this is why that should matter for you. There's a big factor here, right? The mobilization cost of a job. So this is the crew time, truck equipment, setup, ordering, measuring, all those details. It's relatively similar whether that job requires 5 windows or 10, or 10 versus 20. And the contractors are typically gonna pass this efficiency along in the form of volume pricing. So you'll see this as like buy one, get one free, or 10% off 6 or more windows, 15% off 10 or more, right? And that specific structure is gonna vary between contractors, but the underlying reality is consistent. Okay, buying more windows at once is the most cost-effective way to buy new windows, right? Buying 3 or 4 windows at a time across multiple phases over the years is almost certainly the most expensive approach. And as a window contractor, we know this really well. So each phase is a separate permit, right? A separate mobilization, and it's gonna be a higher per window rate. If the budget is the constraint, ask about financing. This is one of the primary reasons I think that window financing is so common, because the incentives are pushing people towards doing more windows at once. Replacing all the windows at once with financing is often more economical than phasing a cash project over several years when we factor in the discounts we can get from volume purchasing versus the cost of financing. How to compare window contractor estimates in Colorado. Window replacement bids, they vary more than most homeowners expect. And that gap is almost always explained by a difference in the scope of work, okay? It's not by one contractor being more efficient than another. Here's some questions that are worth asking a window contractor before you hire them and sign a contract. Is this a full frame replacement or is it an insert replacement? Full frame is the correct approach, okay? Insert only prevents proper flashing inspection. It can trap existing moisture, problems. It just is an inferior installation. Hey, which product are you proposing and why? Ask the contractor to explain specifically why that product is appropriate for your home and your municipality's energy code requirements. Does the bid include flashing at every window? Proper flashing is required at every opening, and I would confirm that explicitly. Is the interior trim included or is it separate? So a bid with casing on 16 windows is not comparable to one without. Confirm the scope before comparing totals. Does the window bid include permits? Permits are required in virtually every Colorado municipality. So I'd confirm that they're included in at least the plan for the job and that the contractor is going to pull them. Hey, what's the lead time on the window order? So standard windows from major manufacturers run 6 to 12 weeks, in some situations even longer. So custom sizes and finishes can definitely run longer in certain situations. Are your installation crews covered by workers' compensation insurance? This is worth confirming before work begins. Is the contractor certified by the manufacturer they're proposing? Are they Pella Platinum? Are they Anderson certified? Are they a Marvin authorized dealer? Manufacturer certification affects installation standards and it can affect your warranty coverage. Do you offer volume pricing or financing? Ask very clearly and directly. The answer affects how you structure the project and the strategy for your project. So on a standard Colorado home, bids from professional window contractors typically vary by $2,000 to $5,000 on what we consider like an average 16 window job. A gap significantly larger than this almost always means the bids don't cover the same scope and the contractors are approaching the jobs differently. Or one is proposing a different product tier than another. There can be a number of differences here. Frequently asked questions from Colorado homeowners about window replacement. Here's some common window replacement questions with some quick answers. Okay, so how long does window replacement take? The installation on an average Colorado home takes about 1 to 2 days once the windows arrive. And obviously that's for, a simple, straightforward job. Now lead times from major manufacturers such as Pella, Anderson, Marvin, Milgard, those typically run 6 to 12 weeks for a standard configuration, and it's longer for custom sizes or specialty finishes. So it might take a while for the windows to come in, but it's pretty quick to do the install once they're in. I would plan your timeline around the order lead time, not just the installation day, because that's the quick part. Do I need a permit to replace windows in Colorado? We're just gonna go with yes, okay? Virtually every Colorado municipality requires a permit. That includes Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, Longmont, Loveland, etc. Permit costs are going to range from $200 to $2,000. So there's some range here. It's important to understand that. WestPro, if we're doing a window replacement project, we're going to pull the permit on every job. What's the difference between entry and mid-range vinyl windows? They have better hardware, improved weather seals, and they certainly have some stronger warranties. The premium, right, that you're going to pay is about 15 to 20% per window more between those two. So roughly $4,000 to $6,000 on what we consider an average 16 window project. For most Colorado homeowners replacing builder grade windows, the mid-range vinyl is the right balance between performance and cost. That we're avoiding the mistakes from the cheap windows last time, but we're not breaking the bank. Is fiberglass worth the upgrade over vinyl? For most Colorado homeowners, mid-range vinyl does meet that energy code and it performs well. So fiberglass products like Pella Impervia or Anderson 400 series, they do become the right answer in strict energy code jurisdictions like Boulder and Boulder County because we can achieve that energy code requirement a little bit easier. Also homes with significant temperature exposure or homeowners who prioritize long-term performance. Fiberglass just expands and contracts at nearly the same rate as glass, right? So the whole window performs well together. And you're just gonna get better long-term seal integrity through the Colorado temperature swings that we all know because we live here. How long do replacement windows last? So quality vinyl windows installed correctly should last 20 to 30 years in Colorado, unless something wild happens. Fiberglass typically lasts 30 to 40 years because they're more durable. Premature failure of windows almost always traces to seal failure on builder grade windows. That's what we see most frequently, and that's 10 to 15 years after installation. Improper installation or inadequate flashing, issues at the rough opening, those are all factors that are gonna contribute to premature failure. Should I replace all windows at once or phase the project? I think it's a great question. I think it's A smart question, we get it all the time. All at once is just more cost efficient. That means one mobilization, one permit, one window order, and volume pricing is gonna lower that per window rate in general. Phasing is reasonable if the budget is a constraint, but keep in mind each phase costs more per window. My recommendation is to ask about financing. Replacing all the windows at once with financing is often more economical than phasing a project that you're paying cash for. I'm Patrick with WestPro Home Exteriors in Longmont, Colorado. Full window replacement cost guide, right, that we made with every pricing table and the U-factor requirements by city is on our website, and there's a link to that in the description. You can subscribe if you want the same treatment of information for roofing, siding, and even gutters. Thank you guys for watching.